5 years into our marriage. Blake cheated. The woman was the very same kid's sister he'd sworn on his life he'd never look at twice. At his bachelor party, the night before our wedding, his childhood friend had sobbed out a tearful confession, mascara running, arms locked around his neck, refusing to let go. He'd sworn to me, hand on heart, that nothing had ever happened between them. I believed him, and the wedding went ahead as planned. The incident ended with the girl being sent overseas. But now, staring at the intimate photos the two of them had posted on social media, I couldn't lie to myself any longer. The only silver lining, I might have lost a husband, but I still had plenty of money. Before we go on, please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. I was doom scrolling when I landed on his best friend's Instagram, a group shot from a welcome home dinner, captioned, "She's back." I spotted Blake instantly. He was gazing at the girl beside him with a softness I hadn't seen in years. Their bodies weren't even touching, yet the eye contact screamed everything. I remembered her too well, Savannah Montgomery, his lifelong playmate. At the bachelor party the night before our wedding, Savannah had clung to him, tears streaming, refusing to release him. "We met first," she'd cried. Someone uploaded the clip, because Savannah was already a micro-celebrity thanks to her family's old money status. It rocketed to the top of the trending hashtags within hours. A friend forwarded it to me before I could even tap play. He called before I hit watch. He begged me not to misunderstand, claiming it was a one-sided crush he'd never encouraged. He even texted me the rest of the footage, him firmly rejecting her. The girl was sent to London for boarding school, and the story died. The next day we walked down the aisle. That was 5 years ago. One photo wasn't enough to convict Blake of cheating. Still, caution one. I messaged the company receptionist instead of his assistant. I didn't want Blake sensing distrust. The receptionist replied that lately Blake rarely worked late. He clocked out right on time. Yet he'd told me business was crazier than ever. This year we'd launched our Chicago satellite office. I'd been living there for 6 months, flying back to Brooklyn only on holidays. Most nights Blake and I settled for phone calls. Over the last month, those calls had dwindled to rushed check-ins. He blamed the grind. I hadn't worried. Marriage and the startup hustle had pulled us apart before, but the receptionist's words proved he'd been lying. That night I couldn't sleep. I flicked through our albums and chat history. He and I met in college, NYU. It started with a debate tournament. Our team wiped the floor with his, and he said my closing argument lit a fire in him. After that he shadowed me everywhere, front row at my presentations, guest at our club events, accidental library run-ins. His pursuit was loud. I was wary. Rumors said the Harrington family owned half of Manhattan, and I feared I was just a passing novelty. Then one night in the library my cramps hit so hard my vision blurred. He noticed, wouldn't back off until I muttered, period. He sprinted for hot water, then to the campus clinic for ibuprofen, then to the bodega for honey ginger tea. He came back drenched in sweat, asking only if the heat pack helped. After that, we were officially a couple. Our class differences didn't matter on campus, but after graduation the gap yawned wide. The pressure almost broke us. I tried to end things. He countered with a proposal. When Blake told his father he was marrying me, the old man said if he went through with it his inheritance rights were forfeit. He'd no longer be a Harrington. He chose me anyway, walked away from every trust fund, stock certificate, and penthouse deed. He swore he didn't care, asked only that I not resent him for being suddenly penniless. So we married. To earn his parents' respect we skipped grad school and dove into the startup hustle. He swallowed his pride and hit up old frat brothers for seed money. I mortgaged my parents' house in upstate New York. Once we opened doors, the Harrington family tried to smother us, undercutting bids, poaching clients, dangling buyouts just to watch us squirm. Bankruptcy circled like a vulture. We quit ordering takeout, squeezed into our Brooklyn apartment's galley kitchen, recipe app open, chopping vegetables like beginners. I was a menace with a knife. Blake finally banned me, took over every meal himself. Before we could afford a chef, the boy who'd never touched a spatula fed us nightly. Hardest of all, Blake landed a partnership by downing whiskey until a stress-induced ulcer bleed landed him in the While he lay in an overflow room, the hospital was packed. I haunted professors for patent licenses, ran the company, and still made it back before lights out. Spreadsheets glowing on my laptop in the dark. Maybe seeing their son on 4 fluids softened them. The sabotage finally stopped. More than once Blake cried into my shoulder, whispering how sorry he was for dragging me through hell, promising we'd see daylight soon. But now that everything was finally looking up, he seemed to be slipping further away. The next day I showed up with dark circles under my eyes. Yet Yet my mind was made up. I spent several days tying up loose ends at the Chicago office, left my assistant in charge, and gave myself a 3-day break to fly back to Brooklyn. The brownstone looked almost the same as when I'd left. Maria, our housekeeper, was startled to see me. I asked her not to tell Blake yet, so I wouldn't disrupt his work. I brought it up as if we were simply chatting. What time has Blake been coming home lately? Mr. Harrington has been terribly busy. He usually gets back late, and when overtime runs too long he just sleeps at the office. If you want to see him, calling ahead would be best. Maria didn't sense the trap and spilled his routine in a breath. My stomach sank. I realized something really might be going on. Let's not disturb his work. I barely kept my expression steady. I still clung to a shred of hope. Maybe he had hit a rough patch and didn't want me to worry. Not long after quitting time I got a message from the receptionist. He had left the building. An hour later there was still no sign of him at home. Even though the drive from our Manhattan office to the Brooklyn brownstone takes barely 15 minutes. I sat on the living room sofa and waited. Every minute felt like an ordeal. More than once I started to dial him, only to set the phone back down. I wanted to see him, and feared seeing him. After 5 hours the front lock finally turned. Panic flickered across his face when he saw me. But he corrected it so fast I wondered if I'd imagined it. Leah, why didn't you tell me you were back? If I'd known I wouldn't have worked late. He looked genuinely sorry, as though he truly regretted missing time with me. If I hadn't checked with the receptionist, I'd never have guessed he was lying. Every question I'd rehearsed died on my tongue. There was no point. His reaction had already confessed. I hardly had the strength to stand, but this wasn't the moment for confrontation. I forced a smile. I missed you too much, so I flew back to surprise you. I didn't call because I wanted it to be special. At that, his shoulders visibly loosened. I missed you too. If you hadn't come today, I was planning to fly over in a couple of days. He was lying. If he'd really meant to visit, he'd have been burning the midnight oil at the office all week, clearing his calendar in advance. Instead, he kept using overtime as an excuse to stay out all night. Back in our room he headed for the shower. I lay on the bed and didn't even glance at the phone he'd left behind. We'd been together so long I could read his little tests. He only dared leave the device where I could touch it because every trace had already been wiped. When he came back he snuck several looks at the screen. Seeing it untouched, his face relaxed. He exhaled too soon. After my own shower I claimed jet lag from the cross-country flight. He tucked me in with tender concern, as though he couldn't bear to let me overtire myself. 2 months apart, before, no matter how exhausted I was, he would never have let me off the hook so easily. Now either his appetite had vanished, or it was being satisfied elsewhere. Once suspicion wakes, every crack glows neon. After 7 years together and 5 married, I lay beside Blake for the first time feeling we were sharing a bed but dreaming different dreams. Before leaving for work the next morning he promised he'd come home early, adding one telltale line, "No overtime today. I want to be with you." Truthfully, I hoped he would stay late. The moment he was gone I contacted a private investigator, PI, handed over his and Savannah's details, and wired a small fortune for a fast, thorough job. The first batch of files hit my phone within hours. Speed came courtesy of Savannah. Cautious as he was, she couldn't resist chronicling their romance on her private Twitter alt. The PI traced the alt from her public account in minutes. Post after post documented her life with him: rings, roses, designer hauls, fingers laced, bodies tangled, mouths fused. The man's face never showed, but after years of studying those shoulders, those wrists, I knew. When I checked the date on the balcony kiss photo, tears finally spilled, while I lay doubled over with the ulcer burn I'd earned from skipped meals and all-night hustle. Telling him it was nothing so he wouldn't worry. He was checking into the Ritz-Carlton, New York with her. The hand cupping Savannah's face still wore our silver wedding band. He soothed me over the phone while undressing another woman. The thought made me gag, but weeks of lost appetite left my stomach empty. Nothing came up. I decided to confront him the instant he walked in and start negotiating a divorce settlement. He left work early and phoned Maria to prepare my favorite dishes. He even detoured for the cranberry scones I loved. I went to the original bakery in Greenwich Village. "You can't get these in Chicago," he boasted. Because of his thoughtfulness I didn't want the meal to go to waste. I'd wait until dessert. At the table he carefully fished slivers of onion from the stir-fried beef, knowing I hate the taste, explaining, "You've been away so long Maria forgot. I never touched the dish. Flavor already seeps in once onion hits oil." "Leah, now that the Chicago launch is wrapped up, let's have a baby." I stared at him, disbelieving. Was this really the Blake I'd once loved? How could the man who'd spoon-fed me promises now spoon onion from beef while begging for a child, when every night he stroked another woman's skin? I once invented 1,000 excuses for him in my heart. I told myself he'd simply fallen for someone else. But in that instant I finally understood. Blake wasn't with Savannah because he loved her. He was just a slave to lust. Nothing nobler than that. He was, quite simply, trash. Looking at him now, I could barely keep my face from cracking. Fortunately, before I had to answer, his phone rang. I caught the screen. Save. Savannah. He didn't pick up, just sent it to voicemail. But she kept redialing. Finally he muttered that a client must need him, stepped onto the balcony, and slid the door shut. I counted to 5, followed him out, and spoke just loud enough for the mic to catch. You almost done. Dinner's getting cold. He flinched, fumbled to end the call, and shoved the phone in his pocket. Too rattled to notice he'd never actually hit end. I smiled sweetly, as if I hadn't seen a thing, and let my voice dip into honey. I come home after forever and you're still married to your job. Play with me instead. Guilt flooded his eyes. I'm sorry. I'll clear tomorrow. No office. Just us. The glow in his pocket finally died. If a quiet split was off the table, I needed more ammunition. Across town, the other girl lost her cool. That night an anonymous text landed in my inbox. Blake wrapping an arm around some girl in a dim Manhattan bar. No face shown. Angle ambiguous. Could be a fling. Could be a trick of light. I glanced, saved the photo, blocked the number. Apparently, I hadn't twisted the knife hard enough. Next morning I dragged Blake shopping. After a couple of boutiques I steered us into the flagship Gucci store Savannah loves to flood Instagram with. He clearly hadn't expected it. I normally sent my assistant. He excused himself to the men's room. Worried you'll have to foot the bill? I teased. He handed me his platinum Amex at once. You know the pin. My first thought, he must have bankrolled Savannah here. Could I claw it back in court? I rang up a few thousand before guilt tapped my shoulder. Community property. I stopped. This was already enough to make Savannah hemorrhage. I told the clerk to deliver everything to the brownstone. When Blake resurfaced, I'd already moved on to the jeweler. I held out my hand with its modest ring. Our wedding bands are the same ones from the ceremony. I could never bear to swap them. Back then, neither family had helped. We'd planned every detail ourselves. The wedding had been small, the rings plain silver. Afterward he had offered upgrades, but I clung to the originals for sentimental reasons. Today I volunteered change, and nostalgia slammed him. He winced, chose the newest pair without blinking, paid on the spot. Custom sizing meant weeks before pickup. I snapped a photo of our overlapping hands wearing the sample rings. Once these arrive you're never allowed to take yours off. Surprise inspections, I warned, laughing. At home I arranged the day's spoils into a 9-grid IG post. Center shot. Our new rings stacked. Caption, my man spoils me. That should stoke the fire. The moment the plane touched down in Chicago my phone lit up with anonymous bile, variations on he doesn't love you. Leave while you can. Kid level tactics. The sender might as well have signed her name. Savannah's contempt runs deep. She sneers at my background, convinced the middle class are tainted. I still remember the second half of the video Blake once sent me. He told her she was like a sister, that he loved me, urged her to move on. Savannah had lifted her chin. Someone like Leah only wants your money. Sooner or later you'll see I'm the one who truly loves you. She said it as if poverty were contagious. Dad's a university professor. Mom worked for a U.S. federal agency. And I'm an only child, solidly middle class, yet to her we're little better than beggars. Over the years I've slogged to grow the company partly because his circle kept looking down their noses. Convinced I married up. Our momentum finally forced an invitation last year. His parents called us to dinner. A tacit acceptance. After that we saw them more often. Last visit, his mother pulled me aside. Think about babies soon. Don't let career swallow everything. I promised I would. I actually considered it. Everything felt hopeful. And once the Chicago branch stabilized I thought I'd try for a child. Now I'm only grateful we never did. I couldn't bear to bring a child into wreckage. Our biggest business client was throwing a victory gala. No way to decline. So I flew home, dressed, and left on his arm. On the steps I spotted Savannah climbing out of a town car. My PI had warned me. Blake hadn't noticed her. She was dripping scarlet silk and diamonds while I'd chosen plain black. Subtlety has its own blade. I could recognize plenty of those pieces. Most were gifts from him. Not exactly a shock. She loves to flaunt them, and my memory happens to be excellent. Truthfully, with her family background she owns chests of jewelry like that. The only reason she keeps parading them is to wave another little victory flag. Even if, in her mind, I'm still clueless about her screwing Blake. Dressing like this in front of me must give her an extra thrill. Right, I don't get it, but I respect it. The toast of tonight's gala. Victor is a wine fanatic, borderline obsessed. He hauled out a serious chunk of his private cellar for the party. The crown jewel is an '05 Romani Conti he's been hoarding. The bottles are so scarce that only a handful of us got tasting invites. And I happened to be one. I never expected Savannah to drift my way. She looked at the glass in my hand and fired off a barb. Seems a waste to let someone like Leah drink wine like this. You obviously don't know the first thing about tasting it. I smiled and corrected her. Please, Savannah, just call me CEO Winters. I'm not used to being addressed by my husband's last name casually. It feels foreign. Besides, you don't need expertise to drink this bottle. Otherwise you'd be the one holding the glass, not me. Are you that familiar with me? Savannah's brows knitted. Hard not to be when you're all over social media, I joked. Blake had been chatting with someone on the other side of the room. The moment he noticed the tension, he lost his usual cool and rushed over. Savannah, what are you doing here? His tone carried a scold, yet the nickname rolled off his tongue with old intimacy. At the sight of him, Savannah's posture softened instantly. I heard Victor was pouring his rarities, so I asked my brother for an invite. Fine. Enjoy yourself. Leah isn't here to play. She has business. Don't get in her way. Afraid I'd spot the cracks. Blake kept Savannah at arm's length, then towed me away. His words stung her. Her eyes went red-rimmed. That must be the girl who confessed to you back then, I teased, sounding oblivious to the undercurrent. Leah, there's nothing between Savannah and me. She was just a kid who didn't know better, Blake rushed to explain. I know you'd never, I said, squeezing his hand, trust shining in my eyes. Still, Savannah's right. I'm clueless about wine. If you hadn't married me, you'd probably have a wife from the same social stratum who knows her vintages. I let a fragile wobble creep into my voice. He rarely sees me vulnerable, and he blamed Savannah for upsetting me, curling a protective arm around my shoulders. Leah, don't talk like that. Without you, I'd still be hiding under my parents' wings. None of this success would exist. I almost laughed aloud. If the company ever folds, we can both pivot to Hollywood. Our acting gets better by the day. For the rest of the gala, Blake and I stuck together like glue. Plenty of guests gushed that we were the perfect couple, partners in love and adversity. I noticed Savannah's eyes stayed bloodshot the whole time, but her misery isn't the end game. I want both of them to pay. While drafting the marketing plan for our upcoming product line, I told the marketing team to spin his and my saga into the hook. The scholarship girl who had old money, the heir who walked away from his inheritance for love, the duo who bootstrapped a startup to unicorn height, pure catnip for netizens. When he saw the deck, he hesitated. Tying the corporate image so tightly to our personal story feels risky. I told him to get with the times. Eyeballs equal dollars. The public worships the wealthy. Influencers flash cash and rake in millions. Plenty of founders leverage personal branding to push product. We're just surfing the zeitgeist. Besides, we've got nothing to hide. So what's the worry? He finally caved. The campaign blew up. He and I trended for days. We launched an official live stream where the host dished behind-the-scenes couple trivia between product demos, and online sales skyrocketed. Watching the revenue chart spike, he stopped muttering about overexposure and actually asked the marketing team to double down on our fairy tale romance angle. The flip side, his rendezvous with Savannah became cloak and dagger. The PI barely snapped him shopping with her anymore. Instead, hotel key logs and Amex bills exploded. If anything, they were spending more time together, just inside rented suites. All the while I was busy elsewhere. Key roles across the company saw a quiet purge. I seated my own people into every critical chair. I also deepened ties with several major investors. My lawyer and CPA haven't slept in weeks. He noticed none of it. He was too busy managing his side piece. The non-stop couple goals content shredded Savannah's nerves. Her solution, leash Blake to her 24/7 with marathon phone storms, monopolizing every free minute he had, juggling Savannah's escalating demands. Blake spent far less energy on the business. Exactly what I wanted. My legal counsel keeps insisting I could milk his guilt in mediation, but I trust my own hands more than whatever remorse he may or may not possess. My objective is to walk away from the divorce settlement, still holding majority voting share. I'm jumping through these hoops because my attorney laid out the brutal truth. Even if he is the adulterous party, New York state statutes barely nudge the asset split in my favor. She urged me to negotiate, exploit any flicker of guilt to squeeze out a better deal, assuming he is capable of guilt. My takeaway, the price of scumbaggery is shockingly low these days. No wonder he felt bulletproof. Savannah's antics lately only deepened his disgust. He was actually toying with the idea of breaking up, but with her family pedigree staring him down, walking away clean was never an option. His indifference grew week by week, and it finally dawned on Savannah that he had zero intention of giving her a title. What he wanted was the classic setup. A flag of domestic bliss planted at home while colorful side banners fluttered everywhere else. Cornered and frantic, she played her worst card yet, She got pregnant. My PI tailed her to a Manhattan pharmacy, filmed her buying the positive pregnancy test, then fished the used strip from the restroom trash. I knew the net was ready to close. I slipped a dossier on Blake and Savannah to a handful of gossip hounds through an anonymous drop. Both were internet fixtures with dynastic backstories. And he was famously married, Instagram's favorite #couple goals. The tip was money in the bank whether they ran the story or sold it to the Harringtons or the Montgomerys. Days later a clip surfaced, Blake and Savannah ducking into the OBGYN wing at New York Presbyterian, faces hidden behind masks. Netizens, eagle-eyed as ever, weren't fooled. I poured a little cash on the fire and the topic rocketed to the top of the trending hashtag list. Crisis PR for both families moved at light speed, 15 minutes of peak heat, then scrubbed from every platform. Messages flooded in. I ignored most. For the few VIPs I answered, my line was identical. Just found out myself. Shocked as you are. Because I'd rehearsed every beat. I was on the phone with key business partners and jittery major investors before sunrise. While he was busy setting the house on fire, my steady hand tilted sentiment inside the company my way. Still, a chunk of business opted to watch from the sidelines. Our official livestream and flagship store comment sections became digital junkyards. I finally saw Blake at home. He looked like he'd aged 5 years. He'd been calling nonstop since the hashtag detonated, but I never picked up. Blake, I honestly never thought you'd cheat. I'd worked a double shift, my complexion almost as gray as his. He wore repentance like a cheap cologne, and it turned my stomach. Leah, it was a one-time slip. Forgive me. I swear it won't happen again. My voice cracked. And the baby, another accident. Even if I could forgive you, what happens to that child? I'll make her end the pregnancy. His certainty revolted me. The repentant bad boy mask made him uglier than ever. I want a divorce. I let defeat sag through every word. Leah, you can't. After everything we've built, one mistake and you throw us away? Throw us away. The Montgomerys won't retreat. Our company's hemorrhaging stock and reputation. And you want me mopping your mess again? You know what the scandal is costing the brand we sweated blood to build. Let's divorce now. Clean this up. Then talk about us when the smoke clears. I fed him the lie that the split was purely corporate, a temporary maneuver. He swallowed it. After all, I'd spent years playing the devoted wife. We summoned lawyers and drafted a divorce settlement. Guilt-ridden and certain we'd remarry. Blake signed every clause without blinking. None of my contingency knives left their sheaths. I walked away with the lion's share of assets and, crucially, majority voting shares. Blake stepped back from daily operations. He didn't protest. He understood his face on the masthead was now toxic. I took the announcement public myself, coupled with a media push branding me as the decisive female founder who cut toxicity loose. Online ate it up. Our name recognition soared past its pre-scandal peak. His side, however, turned into a war zone. The Harrington and Montgomery empires, old allies with intertwined boards, circled the wagons, then each other's throats. The Montgomerys felt ambushed. A marriage pact had once been floated. Blake rejected it, and now their princess had been tagged a homewrecker with a baby on the way. The Harringtons returned fire. He had spurned Savannah years ago. She'd chased him, entrapped him, and dragged their heir through the mud. Yet the merger pipeline was too lucrative to torch. So the clan struck a cynical bargain, a wedding. Fast. Savannah's waistline left no room for delay. The dress had to billow before the bump became an undeniable headline. They spun a fairy tale narrative. Blake and I had quietly divorced months earlier. The delay in going public was pure brand strategy. Perfect plan, except the groom refused to cooperate. He kept begging Savannah to abort, clinging to his fantasy of remarrying me. The Harringtons didn't negotiate. They issued the wedding announcement themselves, sealing the date before he could lawyer up. I watched the press release drop. The fiction that Blake and I had been long separated splashed across every society blog. I could have nuked their timeline with a single post, but I stayed silent. To guarantee my complicity, the Harringtons transferred a prime Brooklyn land parcel to me at a fire sale price. Wedding day. He never showed. Thanks for watching today's story. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and share it with your friends. We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Feel free to share your opinions. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. See you next time.